Hey everybody, my name is Justin the Clue, and I love to read comic books, I love to read manga, and I especially, in the last few years, have loved to follow mangas. Knowing that they come out every few months, being able to check them out, having a new book, I love the idea of continuing stories, especially when it's one creative team or one person that does almost all of it, and to follow that vision as it goes along throughout the years. That is a great joy of mine. And with manga, there is no better place to find that kind of storytelling, mostly because the nature of manga magazines, whether it be monthly or it's weekly, it can often stretch for decades in a way that the market really doesn't allow in an English language context. So I thought what would be fun with this video was to go through a small number of mangas that I get really excited for when I see that they are coming out in stores again. And so most of the ones I'm going to be talking about are actually not that long, but I should warn you, they could go long, especially that most of the manga I'm going to be talking about today are still running in Japan. I love the idea when I pick up a book that it can run off into infinity. I know I'm probably in the minority on that one, that people like to know that there's a definitive ending to things, and then they start reading. Not me. I love the idea that it just could go on and on and on and on, and oftentimes when I see a new book that looks interesting, I'll look online and be like, is it still running? And if it is, I get excited. If it's not, and it's like 3 volumes and it's done, that actually makes me, to be honest, a little bit sad. So with that weird quirk in mind, here are some of my favorite mangas that I'm reading right now. First up, we got Tank Chair. Now, Tank Chair came to my attention because it has a great premise, which is that there's an assassin, he's the best in the world, and that he was incapacitated when a bullet entered his spine, and now he's basically immobile in a big chair, and only when he feels killing intent from anyone does he actually activate, gain consciousness, and go on the offensive. Weirdly, I have Tank Chair Volume 4 here because that's the newest one, and the Tank Chair is nowhere to be seen in this volume because this is a flashback issue. And what I do want to note here is just the beautiful art style in this book. Oftentimes, when I pick up a new manga and I start flipping through it, something that will really capture my attention and make me want to read is if the art is distinct, that there is a stamp there that you recognize, oh, I see that this is from one particular perspective. And that is the case with Tank Chair. It is gorgeous looking. I believe this started as a weekly manga, which I'm not a huge fan of because of how difficult it is on the authors. I prefer monthly manga. Even then, monthly manga is often 40 pages, which is way too much. But as it evolved, this one, and allowed to go to a monthly schedule, you really get just like more and more detail in the way that it's told. Now, I'm not familiar with Manabu Ishiro and what else they have done. I don't believe they've done very much, but this has an understanding of the shonen tropes that then does a lot of interesting stuff with them. Considering that this was weekly when it started, it really rushes through the story. Now, I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that it just brings things to their, logical end earlier than you would expect with this kind of storytelling. When you read a lot of shonen stuff, you recognize tropes that, like, it will be episodic to start off, and then you will get longer and longer battles until eventually sometimes you'll get like 15 volumes that are just one action scene, mostly because the author by that point is at the end of their rope and they can only start building things by having one context to put them all on. And unfortunately, when things drag on that long, it gets really old really fast. That is not the case with Tank Chair. Basically, it feels like there was an endpoint in Tank Chair Volume 3, and this one is a flashback volume, which often happens in this kind of storytelling, and it's just really interesting in the places that it goes and the places that it promises to go. It is running to this day. I believe they're up to Volume 7, so if you want something violent, I wouldn't say it's action-packed. There is action. It is very well rendered, but because the author just wants to move on, it's not like long, endless battles. It's also very clever in its storytelling, and even this volume is from a completely different perspective than the titular Tank Chair. Would recommend. There's only 4 volumes in English, so it's really to jump in and to follow. That'll be the case with some of this stuff that it's mostly early on. There's one specific one that is like into the double digits, but that one is probably my favorite one that's coming out every month. So when I get to it, I will give it my heartiest recommendation. Next up, we have Trillion Game. So this is believe it's published by, so it's a Viz Media book. Those are the people that do Shonen Jump. And it's in a weird magazine. And by weird, I mean it's not one that most people that speak English are familiar with. It is a weekly manga. and it is written by one of my favorite guys that just does writing these days, Richiro Inagaki. He did Eye Shield 21, which was a football manga, which is weirdly out of print in North America. And he also did Dr. Stone, which is a great manga, which basically mixes together infotainment, educational manga, as well as shonen battle tropes. What really caught my attention on this one is that it is illustrated by Ryoichi Ikegami. Now, it may not be a name you recognize because not that much of his stuff has been published in English in the last few decades. Ryoichi Ikegami is, I believe, around 80 years old and is most famous for Crying Freeman. He's done tons of titles, but I think in North America, that's probably the title that he's most well known for, which is funny because Crying Freeman is not even in print these days. And Trillion Game, I don't know how he's still illustrating stuff on a weekly. I know this took a lot of breaks as it went along, but he still got it. It's got like a late period style, but it's also completely recognizable as him. Like, how much heavy lifting are the assistants of him doing? Doesn't matter. It's his style. It feels like his storytelling. And this is one that, like, I read the first volume and I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep going. I liked the writer of it. I liked the art of it, but it was about two guys who wanted to basically become trillionaires. And to do that, they had to play the system, and it was all about greed and stuff like that. Now, that premise, if you had told it to me, I would not have been interested at all. But, you know, the writer of this is so good at building up this kind of shonen tropes that he knows who to make the bad guy, how to make it interesting, how to actually have the interplay and have sympathetic characters, like the dweeb that's at the center of it all. And then there's a confident best friend of his that is trying to get them all the money, and how they play the system. For example, the previous volumes were about coding, creating websites, and how you create value out of basically nothing, and it's just a perceived idea of value. And as it goes along, it comes into video game production. How do you make something addictive? Talent management. And now in this volume, it gets more into gambling, as well as how do you utilize news media as something to make money. Now, is it craven? Yes. Does it understand that it's craven? Yes, it does. And I think that it just walks that fine line and is always interesting in the way that it goes about it. Now, speaking of shonen, we have one that supposedly was never going to be published in print in English. And on that note, this is not in English. This is the French version, because doing research, I was reading this online on the Shonen, is it Manga Plus app, which I highly recommend if people want to follow any series on a weekly basis. Especially there's one about dogs that are ghosts that live in an apartment, and that's probably my favorite weekly manga that I'm reading these days. Anyway, so Kindergarten Wars, that title, don't like it very much. I think I just started reading it because at the point where I jumped online, it didn't have that many chapters. And, I think I saw some people recommending it, saying it was good. So I was like, all right, you know what? Why not? Let's check it out. And this manga is very simple in its presentation. The artist has a kind of, technique that they go to again and again, and she just knows how to maximize it. So there's a simple kind of character design, a storytelling method. Oh, the premise of the manga is basically assassins. There's so many assassins in modern day kind of shonen storytelling. It's the go-to thing, that and Exorcist these days. And also people fighting kaijus, thanks to Kaiju number 8. And so it's a bunch of assassins that they take the job to protect the most important kindergarten in the world from other assassins that are trying to kill the children there. That is a very dark premise, and it is not a dark manga. Well, you know what? It is a dark manga only in that it does a very smart thing, which through kind of running gags and sympathy for the characters makes you like everybody, which then allows the author to do kind of swerves and kill people that you would never expect, have really dramatic things happen in what is otherwise a light manga. And while I mentioned the art style is very simple, the action, when it pops off, really pops off. So it's a mix of these kind of simple faces, and then, let me see if there's an action scene in this, photorealistic action, like the way that guns are drawn, just the storytelling and the moves that are pulled off. It just works really, really well, and it's not just kind of a vibe. Like Bleach, for example, a manga that I enjoy, like the action is not, it's not about the choreography, it's about the big moves, and it's all big moves. And while this finds more of a storytelling angle on the way that the story is told. Now, I mentioned that this is the French edition because people said it's never going to be published in English. It's being published in English right now. Surprisingly, by Yen Press, which is kind of a grab bag publisher, which I love, which are ones that are willing to release in English stuff from a bunch of different publishers, as opposed to like, you kind of know what you're getting when it comes to Viz, in that they pull from a bunch of different magazines. The same thing with this. This is published by Kodansha, and this one, it doesn't even have a different name. Kodansha is the publisher of a bunch of manga magazines, and that's where this one comes from. Originally, it started online, and then it moved to a print magazine. And so Yen Press, I don't know if they've done any, I believe the company's called Shogakukan manga before, especially kind of like shonen stuff, because this is published on Jump Plus, which is the online portal for kind of like shonen Jump style magazines, oftentimes a little bit more adult. And they said they asked and they gave them the license to print it. And so this is being published in English right now. I believe there's 2 volumes that are out. And it's so much fun if you want kind of gag-based manga with a lot of action and a lot of heart. So what I would compare this to is Sakamoto Days, another manga I really, really like, even though I think it may have lost its way a little bit and is dragging on a little bit too long. Large Sakamoto Forever. This one, it's about to end, so I'm not sure how many volumes that will make it go to, but just something to keep in mind is that while this is volume 8, I think it would probably cap out around 13, 14 volumes, so lots to sink your teeth in, really fun, and you can jump on the bandwagon right now. Speaking of mangas, I thought were going to be a bigger deal, and I really don't hear anyone talking about them, especially that this is a manga for manga lovers. It's about making manga. And I think it was really popular online. I don't know the way that English language publishers decide to publish stuff in English language. I mean, this is by Square Enix. Like Kodansha, they are the publisher in Japan, and this is just their American arm, unlike somebody like Yen Press, that they actually license stuff out. And so Dragon and Chameleon, I guess it was really popular online. I don't know if an anime has been announced. Usually when an anime gets announced or an anime is coming, that's when the publishers put the stuff out in English, because they want those books out. So if the anime gets popular, there will be the English language books right there on the shelf to continue the brand. Some people say that like anime is really just an advertisement for manga, because that's really where all the money is to be made. So you also want it in an English language format when it gets out. So Dragon and Chameleon, another one like Trillion Game. I read the first volume and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to continue this. This is something that's really difficult for me sometimes, is that like, when do you continue a book? Like, do you like it enough to purchase it every few months when it comes out? Or do you just go, all right, that's enough, and I will donate the books that I have at this point? Some of them I've bought and been like, I don't want to continue this, and then I've read them in digital form. I was like, oh no, it's so good. I wish I was reading them in print. But I picked up Dragon and Chameleon Volume 2. Sometimes, like, some people say, like, give it 3 volumes, that's a pretty big investment, so 2. And if it doesn't capture you within those confines, you can give it up. But, so this one, the premise is one of the most successful manga artist of all time, perhaps a One Piece like a manga author, switches brains with one of his assistants, who is known as a chameleon, who doesn't have a style of his own, but can imitate the master that he's kind of switched brains with. We don't know why this has happened. Doesn't really matter. It's just kind of like the core conceit, and all the storytelling can come from that. So when I heard that premise, I was like, oh, so it's like the successful guy has to then become successful again, even though that he's been successful for decades? And yes, but the way that it approaches it is so heartwarming, and especially in Volume 4 when we're getting into the, like, putting the team together chapters and getting everybody's motivations. Why do you make manga? What does manga making mean? How do you approach it? And how do you look at the other people that are making manga, and how do you evaluate? Like, something that I find a little bit frustrating with manga, and I don't believe any of the ones that I mentioned today have this kind of conceit of, I need to get stronger, I need to get stronger, I need to get stronger. That's something really understandable for, I guess, teens. The idea of you want protagonists that are striving towards something, even though if that goal is, I want to be stronger to what? To protect my friends? Okay, that's usually the goal, but I like something more there. And in this one, it is a love of manga, a need to get to the heights that he previously was at, so he can just do what he loves to do. This one, again, has such a distinct art style that when I cracked it open, I was like, oh, I really like this. It's moody. This is a monthly manga series, so you know that you won't have a million volumes to buy as it comes out. And that the author of this, Ryo Ishiyama, I believe he was an assistant for One Piece. So you really get the vibe of like, oh, he's worked in the trenches on weekly manga. He understands how this works and what it means to keep going. This one, volume 4, actually almost got me teared up a little bit, involving someone being critiqued really badly about their work and how you go beyond that and what it means to keep going. Anyway, this one I really wanted to highlight. This is kind of the main reason I wanted to make this video, because my local comic book shop, who I bought the other 3 volumes from, didn't have any copies when I came in. They had one, they sold it. And this makes me nervous that this is not selling, that no one's talking about it in print form. So if you're interested in like stories about creation, specifically manga, and the motivations that go into that, highly recommend Dragon and Chameleon. I mean, just look at this art. It's like so dramatic. Let me see if I can find a good passage. The storytelling is very large-breasted, if one will say, on some of the characters. Not all of them, but just energetic. Like if you see a lot of, fan service, as they like to call it, you worry that the author is not doing so good when it comes to readers. And this one, has a little, but not to the point of being distracting, I would say. The only time it really hits me is when I pick up a new volume and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Oh, I love this part where the author talks about a older guy that worked as an assistant and how he was the best in the world, and he visualizes it with all the other assistants having guns, and the older guy who's been in the business for decades, he's in complete control. And this older gentleman, you learn that like his family life, he is an assistant because he just wants to spend more time with his family, and is this going to be his last shot at glory? Well, you'll have to read it to find out. Dragon and Chameleon. And these ones, manga's getting a little bit more pricey. It used to be around like $12 the last 5 years. It's inching up there, especially stuff like this, the Square Enix one, which I will also say that Square Enix has really good quality when it comes to their books, but I'm surprised that this is done in the smaller format. My favorite one is the way that Kodansha publishes them, which is this wider format. Let me just show you. Like, this is small, especially how detailed the art in this. It's kind of a bummer that it's so small. And then you also have I believe that like this size is the way that it's published in Japan, in this kind of, what is the term? Cut? Something like that. And the cool thing about French books, which we never get in English, is that the French books are often almost direct imitations of the Japanese counterpart, so you get the slipcovers. And what we don't get in America is that, like, you always get an image on the front and the back most of the time, as well as glossy pages. A lot of American republications have started to do more of including the glossy pages with it, but not enough in my opinion, especially Viz. They really cheap out unless it is their signature line, and their signature line are always the titles that are not in Shonen Jump. Those are the ones that get these like larger formats. Oh, like this one doesn't even have any of the color pages. And you can tell that these were in color. This is a trick if you didn't know this. If you pick up a manga and it's like really dark in the first few pages, it's because these pages were originally in color. And they just decided not to bring that over, and that's why it is in black and white in this version. All right, so let's continue with titles from big publishers. I'm not really highlighting any kind of like indie publishers in this, but I do want to pick titles that are easily accessible for people, if you will. There are a lot of new little publishers that are doing stuff, going to conventions in Japan, picking stuff up and doing English translations, and just doing small print runs of them, and I will highlight them in other videos. I really like Manga Mavericks and what they're doing right now, but that, again, that's another video. So Ninja vs. GOKUDO. So the way that I usually pick mangas is I'll look at what's number 1, and as long as it's not a title like How I Got a Big Butt in the Dungeon World Even Though I Was a Level 1 Alchemist, I will pick it up and I will flip through it and I'll go, all right, what is the hook here and how is it interesting? Now, this one is getting an anime adaptation. Kindergarten Wars has been rumored to have an anime adaptation for like, boy, it feels like 2 years now and nothing has come up yet. I don't know if someone's working on it and they're waiting to announce it. Is there even more rumors? I don't know. But Ninja vs. GOKUDO is getting a anime adaptation. I'm a little nervous. It looks really cheap because this is a kind of gag combat manga. That's probably the funniest. I don't know if it's the funniest manga that I read every month because I have a few more I want to go through here. But it's one of the ones that I always have a giant grin on my face when I read it. The basic premise is simple. It is a ninja who has like magical powers that finds himself at war with the Yakuza clan because they've been fighting for hundreds of years. And you follow two of them that in the first volume befriend each other, the younger ninja and the leader of the Yakuza clan. In this case, it's called GOKUDO. I don't know why they didn't call it Ninja versus Yakuza. That feels like it would be a little bit more clear. I'm sure there's some reason. Maybe they wrote about it because it's a Kodansha book and they have notes at the end of the book why that is the case. Maybe it was too generic. And so from that starting premise, you get this amazing, basically hyper gory Fist of the North Star manga. But this one is consciously comedic. And so you have these two characters and they get to know each other a little bit. And eventually it leads to a couple volumes before this one, number 8, into the long volume, battle, which I mentioned before. This one, I feel like it works because it introduces enough characters that have enough gimmicks to make you want to see what happens next and how our heroes will get out of it. The big battle also involves the president of the United States and the president of Japan because they've been friends since they were in high school. And this is like super hyper dramatic, over-the-top storytelling for the sake of humor, as well as it reaches such operatic levels that it then becomes moving again. This does a gimmick where every time someone gets murdered, and oh boy, do a lot of people get murdered in this comic, you then see a flashback of how they got to this point, and they always die with a smile on their face. I'm not even joking. Our hero of this, or all our heroes, basically their one move is that he can decapitate people, and it's always the head then thinking back about how it got into that situation and what lessons it learned now that it's all over. Highly recommended. If you like comedic, action-packed stuff, I should also mention our two heroes, the ninja and the Yakuza. Okay, so the ninja is probably the hero. The Yakuza is a real piece of trash who is blatantly evil throughout the book. We learn as the book goes along that they bond the first time because they love a magical girl show, which I had not been familiar with before. I'm going to get the title wrong. It's like Precure. There's a new season every year. You never really hear anybody talk about it unless you're really into that scene. And anyway, both the characters love this. And the author of this manga, Shinsuke Kondo, he loved that stuff as well, to the point that at the end of every book, there's like interviews and fake articles, oftentimes about that fake TV show. In this one, it is the Yakuza newsletter. And like there's tons of in-jokes and little like characters write comics that are in the manga itself. Really recommend this one. This one's more for a particular kind of audience than some of the other ones that I mentioned, which are a little bit more general. But if you like all the stuff that I've talked about, you should check this one out. It's at volume 8. I'm not sure what volume it's at right now. This one has no end in sight. Anime's coming out. Maybe the anime will be a big hit. And if it is, you can be on the ground floor. One I want to talk about just really quickly, Snowball Earth. This one has a very simple premise, which is there is a kid who would fly around in a robot, and he was the best in the world. One day he was supposed to take down a giant monster. He failed and was frozen and for, I think, 12 years. And now he returns to Earth with his giant robot to discover everything is frozen over and monsters have taken over the planet. The basic hook of this one is the kid is very antisocial, and that one of his goals is that he has a list of things that he wants to achieve in life, like hang out with friends, go get food with friends, and he's checking them off as he goes along, even though it's in an apocalyptic world. This is a monthly title, so it has faster storytelling than you would get from something like this, which is a weekly title. There'll be also less volumes because of that. This is done in what I would call the widescreen manga storytelling technique, which you notice a bunch of books, especially monthly ones, tend to take. And it's not my favorite, but I think this one makes it work. And it is also very hyper stylized in the way that it's presented. This is on the spectrum of like Kaiju number 8, maybe even a little bit more classical than that. I think this one's a blast. I have no idea where it's going to go as it plays out. I mean, is it going to wrap up in 10 volumes? I'm not sure. I do know that there is an anime coming out soon for this one, and I believe it's done by a big studio. It's going to be a lavish affair, and I'm looking forward to it because there's a lot of potential with this. This is probably the most basic one out of all the ones that I've mentioned, but listen, if you like giant monsters, you like people in mechs fighting those giant monsters, and you like the people in the mechs making friends, then you're going to want to check this one out. Okay, so for the penultimate book, I want to talk about probably the one I get the most excited about every time I see it come out. And that is Welcome to Demon School Iruma-kun. This is by Osamu Nishi. If you know this name, that's because she is also writing the mega hit Shonen Jump title Ichi the Witch. And Osamu Nishi illustrates and writes Welcome to Demon School Iruma-kun. And I don't know what she's drinking in the morning, but she is somehow doing a weekly title. So this is the one that's like the big commitment. I believe there's about 50 volumes of this, and it's still being published. But anyway, she is still drawing and writing this one, which is published weekly, as well as writing one in Shonen Jump that's published weekly. And I believe she's also writing a spin-off of this that is being published monthly. This manga has been a huge hit. There's multiple anime seasons of it, which are kind of cheap. They have their fans, but it took forever for this to be published in English. And that's because it's not something that can really be put in an easy box. It's kind of a shonen battle type manga, but not really, because everybody in this book gets along and they're all friends, even though that it kind of has a structure. It's kind of gag manga-ish as well. The premise is a young child is sold by his parents to a demon, and that demon, who is like a big emperor, who is one of the most powerful demons in hell, is the nicest guy in the world. He's an old man. There's nothing nefarious about him. He always wanted a grandson, and now he has one. And he wants to make sure that this grandson has everything that he could possibly want, which means going to demon school and learning to be the best demon that he can. As you may have noticed, he is human, and the demons at the school do not know that he is human. So there is that secret identity thing going on, as well as he has to prove himself. He wants to lay low, but of course, that doesn't work out. And it ends up just being him forming a bunch of friends and, basically just making friends. And that's how it goes from there. It's so funny. It's so heartwarming. For the probably third time of all the mangas I've taught, this one is in a big battle arc where all the characters are trapped on an island and they have to collect stuff to get a certain point total. And this has been going on for, I think, 4 volumes at this point. Anyway, this one is so much fun. I love all the characters. I think it's so funny. I cannot believe the author of this is 50 volumes into a manga she does every week, as well as writing one for a rival. Are they rival magazines, or are they just under the big same publishing arm? I think they're under the big same publishing arm, but I don't think I've ever heard of that happening before. Tell me a cool story. Cool story? So there is fighting in this manga, and when it happens, it is really fun. That's not really the kind of central conceit of it. It's mostly about cleverness and friendship and all that fun stuff. I think this one will be getting more popular. I've seen it in big retail stores because Ichi the Witch is about to get probably an anime any day now, even though that it started only last year. It's a huge hit. It's going to be probably a Kaiju number 8 style thing, maybe even bigger. But the author has a long-running manga series that is super fun that I would highly recommend checking out. I almost didn't check this one out because it has one of those long titles, which, those can be a little bit... Oftentimes those are isekais, and they leave me a little bit cold, but I'm really happy that I did. It's so delightful. This is the one I look forward to the most every time that I see a new volume is coming out. Finally, I got a big boy here that is atypical of everything I've talked before. But it is a long-running manga series. It's ended, clearly, because it's a much older school-style manga. But I don't really hear anybody talking about this, even though it is a huge deal. One of the reasons that, English publishers don't want to publish manga is that it's too long-running. And, when you publish volume 1, you commit to basically publishing everything. And if you don't, it will haunt you for the rest of your life, like Viz learned when they stopped publishing Gintama, because I believe it ran 80 volumes, and they stopped around 30, and the fans won't let them go. And also old manga. Publishers have tried, and they have decided that old manga does not sell. And Legend of KAMUI by Shirato Sanpei is one that not only is it old, but the author did not want to allow it to be published in English. He's passed away many years ago, but I believe that was something that he was very, strong about. And I only learned about this because my brother got obsessed with the French volumes of this that were published that would go for an absurd amount of money because the publisher was not allowed to republish them again. And no one ever believed it was going to come out in English. And then it did. Drawn and Quarterly somehow made a deal. The floodgates are a little bit opening recently because stuff that like was never going to come out in English, for example, Ashido no Joe, which could have been on this list as well, a really super famous manga, this one about a boxer, it's getting published in English. Now, one of the, I guess, hitches about this is how expensive it is. And I'll talk about that after I talk about the content of this book. So, this is a revolutionary book. It is part of Garo, which was a monthly Gekiga manga magazine. Gekiga being a wave made up of moving beyond the kind of kids manga that was really popular, trying to push the boundaries of what manga can be. And this was one of those books. Basically, it follows a, wandering sword boy as he goes through many adventures and the people around him. It's about revolution. It is about communism. It's about throwing off the shackles of the oppressors that surround you in ways that are not evident, that are violent, and that are very complicated. And this is a pretty long-running one as well. I'm glad they're doing like big volumes of it. And this is a must-read. If you're going to read any of the manga that I mentioned, it should be this, because this is classic, it's essential, and it just hasn't been read. There was a follow-up to this, done in a more modern style, that Viz published in the early 90s. Those volumes are completely out of print. This is the one that you want to read. I believe it's A Legend of Kamui Den is the way that's often labeled, and for this one, they've simply gone with The Legend of Kamui. I love this manga, so I am already caught up to where this is because I actually read it in French, because my brother got the volumes in French. This is actually a bigger trim size, looks great printing. They did a new translation. Everything that you would want is in here. The only thing that hesitates me, and I can understand why people would not pick it up, is the price. This one is $50. So you know what? For as much manga as you're getting, it's a little bit more expensive. If it was anything else, I think that's maybe because Drawn and Quarterly is publishing it. I like Drawn and Quarterly a lot. They were on the kind of cutting edge of manga, even though that they used to do flip books a lot, and they also, which I'm not a big fan of, they re-lettered the book. I prefer it when it's the original lettering in Japanese, and then there's like little symbols telling you what the sound effect is. And this is not what this does. But listen, the fact that we got Kamui Den in print is amazing. It is, again, essential. There are anime adaptations of this, I believe, but none of them that I hear people talk about that much. Oftentimes because these were done quite a long time ago. This is manga that's not just for kids. And I don't know how this is selling. I am not hearing many people talk about it, which is kind of making me a little bit nervous because I do not want this to be kind of shutting down other big essential manga projects that should come out. Now, this is another classic. I wasn't going to talk about this, but because it was on the top of my shelf, this one is ridiculously expensive. $80. So I thought when they announced this, it would be in the gigantic trim size that they've been starting to do of the deluxe edition. I don't even think this is going to fit in frame. Of like Gundam, the deluxe editions. Like, companies have found that suckers like me will pick these up in these big giant trims, because especially if it's like art like Berserk and stuff like that, you want to see at its biggest size. And this one is $72.95. So this gigantic book is less expensive than this. That is wild. And I'm nervous that this is leading to a crash of some kind. I don't know, but I will keep up to date, keep supporting, because I love all the stuff that's coming out these days. I love being able to go into the shop basically every week and having a new book that I pick up because I'm following something. And I hope that there's a title here that interests you as well. I'm putting all the books out here so I can have a still and I don't forget. So I know that not all of these may be of interest to you. We all have different tastes, but there's got to be something on here that captures your fancy. And I hope that I recommended you a new series, and I hope that you subscribe to this channel because I'll be talking a lot more manga, a lot more movies, maybe even some video games in the future. So stay tuned, and thanks again for watching.